McMullen, I'm Jody McDonald. We are Birds 365, and we get a chance to talk to some of the best Eagle beat reporters in town, and certainly that's the case again today. Joining us is Martin Frank from the Delaware News Journal, and a guy who's jumped on with us plenty during the year. So here's where I want to start, Martin. Mm-hmm. We started doing the show a year and 2/3 ago, somewhere thereabouts. Our 450th episode here today, and you've
450,
been
Martin.
450. Nice round number for a Martin Frank appearance. Now you've been on with us plenty of years. We plenty of times. We know what the Eagles did last year. Surprised to make the playoffs. They get handled easily by Tampa Bay. Come back, more legitimate contender coming into the year, and they run out to a 13-1 record. And then they lost the last two games. You guys get a grasp on this. Those of us who don't attend practice, don't go there every single day, don't. So we lean on guys like you. What do you think the vibe is around the Eagles right now? Because it ebbs, it flows, it goes up, it goes down. Yeah. You've been watching it for years. You covered the team for years before Birds 365 started, but we always look at things through our own light of how long we've been doing the show. How would you describe the vibe with everything that's transpired about the Philadelphia Eagles this year going into Sunday's game against the Giants?
Yeah, actually, there's a quote from A.J. Brown just yesterday in practice when he was asked about that. He said, "I'm pissed off." And I think a lot of players are. I mean, because they have to play in a game that should have been meaningless. I mean, this should be, they should have already clinched the top spot. They should have already clinched the NFC East championship. Division title. So they should be going into this like resting their starters, maybe getting, treating it like a preseason game, maybe getting a guy like Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders, AJ, and Devonta Smith, a series or two, maybe play the first quarter, come out of the game, watch the backups play, kind of laugh, take it easy on the sidelines. And instead they have to play and they have to win. I mean, there's such a huge difference between going into the playoffs as the number one seed with a bye week and home field advantage for two games going to the Super Bowl, as opposed to, losing this game, having Dallas win the NFC East if Dallas wins, and then you're the wild card team, and hey, you have to play Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road again for the second straight year. And you know what? Brady's still pretty good. They still got a pretty good team.
Yeah, we've seen that movie. Could you imagine, even if they played well and they were up, say, 16-10 in the fourth quarter and Brady gets the football late, there's going to be some hearts and throats. But I do think you're right, but the irony of Week 18, Martin, is the Giants don't have to play, similar to the Eagles last season. I don't think they're going to play to win the football game. Now, Brian Daboll could have autonomy. Who knows? He might be competitive, but it certainly seems trending out of New York. The stories is that the Giants are going to handle it like you just said. Maybe the starters are out there for a couple series, and then at least the key players move them down. You got to play, sit them down. You got to play some, obviously. And if that's the case, the Eagles should be fine. But while I say that, shouldn't the Eagles be fine anyway? Especially if Jalen Hurts is back. They beat this team, 48-22? The talent differential is huge. 2 games with Gardner Minshew affects the psyche that much of Philadelphia. I mean, this team was 13-1 with the quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. They're a good team. They, you said, people, the last 2 weeks have kind of made everyone forget that they were 13-1, just 2.5 weeks ago and stuff. So, yeah, they should beat the Giants. There shouldn't be any problem. But, these doubts start creeping in and, they have to play a must-win game technically, which is probably their first must-win game of the season, all things considered. And, crazy things happen in this game. We've seen it before. We've seen it often, a team that has no chance of winning somehow, everything goes right. And the one thing by playing all these guys on Sundays, you run the risk of injury. I mean, it's kind of been happening to the Eagles lately. I mean, they still don't have Lane Johnson. Probably not going to have Avonte Maddox back. Josh Sweat, suffered a pretty scary injury on Sunday. I mean, it doesn't look like he's going to be able to play. So, you want to get your guys healthy. You don't want to like run them, run the risk of like getting more guys hurt. And, that could happen Sunday as well, too. I think there's a lot of kind of nervous energy. But like you said, they should beat the Giants. And if they do, beat the Giants pretty handily, then, everything will go back to normal and the Super Bowl train will be running again like it has been for most of the year.
On schedule. Yeah.
Martin, I want to follow up on something you said. I like the way you said it. This is the first must-win game for the Eagles season. Okay, all right. The first game of the season. Must win? No, it wasn't. Or the second one they were won, or the third one. You're right. This is the first must-win game of the season. So logically, a pressure comes with that. Should we be nervous about the fact, not that the Eagles can't withstand pressure, but they've gone 17 weeks without it. An entire year since Tom Brady walked off the field after they. When was the last time they played the must-win game? Yeah, down in Tampa last year. That's a long time and a lot of changes. So if this is the first time as a group they face a must-win situation and the pressure that accompanies it, should we be worried about it from an Eagles standpoint?
I don't think so. I think they can handle business. I mean, I think like what these last 2 weeks have done in a lot of ways is kind of like shock these guys back into reality, saying, we can't be on cruise control. We have to buckle down. We have to treat this like a playoff game. James Bradbury was saying yesterday that, 2 weeks ago when they were 13-1, they kind of looked at it and like, they probably looked too far ahead and, maybe they kind of took their next couple games lightly. They thought they could just show up on the field, even with Gardner Minshew, and, if not beat the Cowboys and definitely beat the Saints and, not have to worry about anything. So, this kind of shocked them a little bit into reality, saying, all right, we got to buckle down. If we're going to make this playoff run, we have to win this game. We have to focus on the Giants, get this win, because they've been playing like that most of the year, like, taking their opponents, just worrying about the upcoming opponents and pretty much blowing them out. I mean, they haven't really had too many close games up until the last 3 or 4 weeks. So, I think this kind of shocks them a little bit back into reality and, I think they'll be okay.
And there was some good news on the injury front yesterday, Martin. You mentioned the bad news with Devonta, and obviously Lane Johnson's not going to be back until the playoffs as he tries to play through the core muscle injury. Josh Sweat, we all know the scary situation. Jalen Hurts, first and foremost, he's at install day for the first time, so that's a very positive development, number one. And I think we'll get a clearer view today if he goes through those ball security drills. I think he's playing. Unless they kick us out. They might kick us out, Martin. And then you have 3 players they started the practice window on. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, most notably, but also Robert Quinn and Brett Toth. You don't think CJ is playing for this game. This is about the playoffs, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think there's a chance Robert Quinn's going to play.
Yeah.
Because, Josh Sweat doesn't look like he's going to play. And they're kind of, they kind of need some depth there at defensive end. So I think out of the 3, the more likely guy to play would be Robert Quinn. Chauncey, he's been out for a while. And as Nick Sirianni was saying the other day, I mean, it's an injury where you pretty much just have to shut it down and rest. So, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson needs the time to ramp back up into game shape and everything like that. So I would think he's probably not going to play right away. I mean, they could obviously use him with Avonte Maddox being out. You got Reed Blankenship at safety. You got Josiah Scott at the nickel spot. So, they can obviously, and Kayvon Wallace obviously is the backup, but it's, not ideal. But then again, for this game, you're going against the Giants who, even when they're playing everybody to win, their passing game isn't the strongest. You got to stop Saquon Barkley and you got to stop Daniel Jones from running and then, force them to throw. So I think they could get by this game, obviously, without Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, but obviously, and then getting that bye week, gives Chauncey even another week to get back. So I think that's what I think they're getting him ready for the playoffs. I think Robert Quinn, can probably play right away if they need him, and I think they're going to need him.
All right, I'm going to go out on a limb here, Martin, and predict that Jalen Hurts, when he starts Sunday against the Giants, will not run the football as often as he did in that last game that he played against the Bears. What was it? 17 rushing attempts. Yeah, that's got no chance.
Nick will tell you only 2 designed, and Shane will tell you 6.
Understood the disparity and how it can be judged. Go with even if we go with Shane's number of 6 and subtract the sneaks and the kneel downs and everything else, he's going to run it less. How much less? Do the Eagles scheme differently in a game that they need to win? The stakes are pretty high. But even if they lose, they're still going to the playoffs, and they're going to need Jalen Hurts for that game. How does Jalen's return from injury sneak his way into the play calling of the game on Sunday against the Giants?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's not going to be 0. I mean, he has to run because that's what makes him Jalen Hurts, and the Giants would be able to kind of flesh that out pretty quickly. If they see he's not even trying to run, then they'll just clamp down on the receivers and everything like that. And, so, I mean, I don't think they would play him if they didn't think he couldn't run at all. So, I mean, I would say you'd get at least maybe 8 to 10 running attempts, whether it's scrambling out of the pocket, while trying to escape a sack. There might be a couple design runs in there, maybe 2 or 3, maybe more read option type of things where instead of, his natural reaction would be to keep it, maybe he hands it off to Miles Sanders or tries a short pass. But, he can't just be a drop back, sit in the pocket type of quarterback because that takes away all the superpower, so to speak. So, he's going to run. I mean, it's not going to be 17, but it could be like 10, 9, 10, 11, something in that range.
Yeah, the superpower aspect, the super healing hasn't come to fruition. But
finally kicking in this week, or so we believe.
Yeah, well, then think about us. It would take us like much longer.
Yeah,
much faster than we do.
2 to 3 years. It's shocking that a 2 to 3 week injury has taken 2 to 3 weeks. It's funny how that works with NFL players, but not an insult to Jalen. Obviously, that's another injury. It has to heal. You mentioned. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of guys, Dallas Goedert the same way. He felt like he could play, basically. Didn't think he could should have been put on injured reserve, but he had a small fracture, and it's got to heal. So I do think there's that aspect to it. But, when these guys come back, and I want to get in the weeds on the roster with you, not Jalen, because he's never been on injured reserve, but they have to make some moves. They have to make some roster moves if they bring players back. You bring up the point, Quinn is most likely this week. They got to create a spot for him. Chauncey down the road. I don't think Brett Toth is. I think that's just about getting him some work, late in the season. But we'll see with Lane's issues as well. How do you create these spots? One thing, people say, Martin, is Brett Kern, the punter. He's out of elevations. You got to create a roster spot for him. Now, I've heard the theory that just cut him. He hasn't been great. Sign another punter to the practice squad. But they would have done that by Wednesday. So they got to create a spot for Brett Kern as well. Yeah.
That's a great point.
What do you think they do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the one thing they could do, if they don't think Avonte Maddox is going to come back, put him on IR. That's one spot. There are a couple guys.
Let me interrupt for a second because you guys know this better than we do. putting Devonta Maddox on IR. I know in baseball, this kind of tips the hand of me being more of a baseball guy than a football guy. You can put guys retroactively on the disabled list. If you miss like 3 games, you can put them on the 10-day, and those 3 days that you didn't play count,
Right.
and then you come back 7 days later. Can you put guys retroactively on IR? Or if they make that decision on Maddox, he's out for the next 4 games.
He's out.
Yeah,
4
and
games.
pretty much out for the year. I mean, that
Yeah.
takes you through the Super Bowl. So
Yeah.
I mean, they could have done it last week, but maybe they just wanted to wait, and because even if they did it last week, he's probably out until the Super Bowl anyway. So I mean, that's one option. I mean, it doesn't seem like it does seem like his injury is a pretty serious one. I don't know if he'd be back in the next couple weeks. Everyone's talking, oh yeah, he'll be back for the playoffs, but I mean, that's not guaranteed. It's a possibility. I mean, they do get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back, whether it's probably not this Sunday, but at least in the playoffs. So, that might be one option. I mean, you can take your chances, on a guy like, let's say, running back Trey Sermon, cut him and sign him back to the practice squad. Hope nobody else takes him. I mean, there are a couple other guys like that. You can possibly hope that get to your practice squad and stuff like that. So they're going to have to take a risk with someone.
Mr. Interrupter here. You're making good points, Martin, so I want to kind of slide off them. If they cut Trey Sermon, would it just be a given they'd re-sign him? Or would he be like, hey, wait a minute, you didn't give me a chance to play, and now you cut me? Or do you think he'd go shopping for another team? It's a very viable answer, but how do you think it would play out?
Well, yeah, I mean, he could go shopping, and another team can just claim him off waivers and sign him to their 53-man roster, and he's on the roster. He doesn't have to worry about going back to the practice squad, which is a cut and pay also. I mean, I'm not sure he would want that either.
Yeah,
it's a risk. I mean,
yeah, the waivers part is the risk because you can't control somebody else picking them up on waivers. Generally, the luxury Howie has is calling somebody in his office, explaining, look, we need the roster spot. We want you back. We love you. Love them up. We'll put you on the practice squad. You got a futures deal. You're going to get a chance. And, oh, by the way, you might get a Super Bowl ring as well. So you can sell it that way. But you can't control if somebody picks up. So that's where the risk is. The waivers, somebody needs a body, and everybody has so many injuries. And they say, oh, player from the Eagles, that's a pretty good team, is on waivers late in the season. Could be Janarius Robinson. I need an edge rusher. Could be Sue Opeta. I need an offensive lineman. Could be Trey Sermon. I need a running back. That's sort of the risk. I think Howie will make it very clear to whoever they need to juggle what the Eagles want to do. And they can push. That Super Bowl ring is a big carrot, so to speak. So
right.
The waivers part is the concern.
Yeah, and also if you're Trey Sermon, I mean, Miles Sanders is a free agent. Boston Scott probably, good chance might not be coming back. So even if Sanders is back, you can slide into that Boston Scott type of role. He's been with the team all year. They like him. They think he might have a future. So, it's possible. But yeah, like John was saying, and it's a great point. Like, if somebody claims him off waivers, now chances are you're looking at 14 playoff teams. I mean, unless one of the other teams that's out of the playoffs, I mean, I don't think they can claim him, right?
No, they're already on futures deals type thing. So
yeah, exactly. So the playoff teams are now 14 instead of 32, who could claim you. And we already know the 49ers gave up on them. So that's probably one of them that won't. So, and the Eagles. So now you're down to 12 teams. I mean, maybe it's a risk worth taking.
Yeah. It's a good point. Martin doing math. I love it.
And And
All
it's
right,
early,
Martin. So you
too.
got the Giants coming up on Sunday. We don't know. We're gonna have Pat Leonard on next hour, who covers the Giants for the New York Daily News. Dayball has played his cards close to the vest, as well he should. Do you think we'll know before the game starts? We're here in Philadelphia. We're always reading the tea leaves. Ooh, Jalen Hurts was on install day, so that means he's going to play. There are little hints you can pick up on leading up to a game as to how the game is going to be handled. If there's a question about how it's going to be handled for the coach, when do you think we'll have a pretty damn good grasp as to what the Giants are planning as far as playing and or resting players come Sunday?
I think we already know. I mean, it would be kind of foolish for Brian Dable to play all his starters and play to win a game when they have to play the very next week on the road, probably either Minnesota or San Francisco or Dallas or even here. I mean, why would you do that? I mean, Nick Sirianni kind of laid the blueprint for that last year going into that last game against Dallas. I mean, all those guys pretty much sat out, or if they played very little. I mean, Kelsey started the game just to keep his streak going, and then he got out of there. So
yes, Jason will play. Oh
yeah,
even if this game was meaningless, he would have played.
He would. Yes, absolutely.
2 snaps.
So yeah, I mean, Brian, this is the only chance that Brian Dable gets to rest his players going into the playoffs. They don't get the bye week. There's no chance for that. They have to go on the road. They need Saquon Barkley at 100%. They need Daniel Jones at 100%. So I would think, there's no way he's going to risk them trying to win a game that doesn't mean anything, because they're going to be number 6 in the number 6 seed, whether they win or lose. So I think we pretty much already know the answer. I mean, maybe those guys.
Let me play devil's advocate, and
Okay.
I'm stating devil's advocate because I don't really believe it or agree with it, but it is historical fact. The year that the Giants beat the undefeated Patriots in the Super Bowl, last week of the season, the Giants had nowhere to go. They were locked into their playoff spot, and Tom Coughlin says, damn straight we're going to go out there and try and knock them out from the ranks of the undefeated. And they played them really tough. They just lost at the end, and then they caught them again in February in that Super Bowl. And, oh, by the way, that's when they beat the undefeated Patriots. So there is historical precedent, significantly removed from it now in a different situation with a different coach. Yeah. But there is a line of thinking that, hey, you got to keep going. You got to keep your momentum going. That you can't take your foot off the gas, and you don't want to go stop and start heading into the playoffs. You think there's no chance Brian Daboll goes down that road?
No, and one thing is because there's now an extra game, so this is actually the 17th game as opposed to in the past it was 16 games. Not that they, Tom Coughlin cared about that or anything like that. I mean, if they played 20 games, he'd still play it up.
He played the same way.
Exactly. And by the way, I think Brian Daboll, but we're up to him, he'd play. But, it's not up to him. I think things have changed. Yeah. After he clinched the playoffs he was all fired up. Yeah, we're going to play. We're going to play. The next day, Joe Shane, whispered in his ear, settle down, Brian. We're not going to play. So yeah. I think that's part of it as well. Just the change in the sport as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's different now. Plus you got the extra game. I mean, it was kind of funny because, Fletcher Cox was asked about if the situation the Eagles in is kind of a good thing because now they have to play, a meaningful game, heading into the playoffs to build momentum. And he just laughed. He said, how many games do we play now? 17.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
now everybody points back. I like to point this out, Martin. Everybody points back to the Eagles last year. The COVID rules were still in effect, and they manipulated those things to the hilt. The Eagles claim it was all up and up, but yeah, I don't believe the Eagles. So they manipulated the sniffles into inactivating 12 different players. Yeah. And then last year they could elevate 12 off the practice squad. You can't do that this year. That's out the window.
Tougher. Yeah.
So you got to play somebody. You got to play some players, but the key players, Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Dexter Lawrence, maybe Kayvon Thibodeau, Xavier McKinney's back. He's a good player. Those guys are probably going to be, maybe they play a series, maybe they play 2 series, and then you go to bubble wrap. But certain guys have to play. I mean, it's not the preseason. You don't have 90 bodies. You only have the game day roster, plus you can elevate 2 players. So some guys got to play. So the Eagles I'm saying the Eagles got to play. I mean, there's nothing they can do. They put themselves in this position. They got to play.
Yeah. I mean, the ideal situation for the Eagles is, you just blow them out early. You have like maybe 28-3 halftime lead. You bring like Hurts and the starters back for the third quarter. You score a touchdown on the opening drive, and then you get those guys out of there. I mean, that's the ideal scenario for the Eagles. I mean, if it doesn't happen, then those guys got to play into the fourth quarter. But ideally, the Eagles want to get out to a big lead. They want to blow the Giants out. And if the Giants, get Barkley and Jones and, some of those other guys out by, the end of the first quarter, and they take advantage of them in the second quarter, which is, always been their strong quarter this season. Like I think they've scored like over 200 points in the second quarter. So, build a big lead going into halftime, take that opening drive of the third quarter, get another touchdown, and then get those guys out of there. So, I mean, that would be the ideal scenario for the Eagles. Whether or not it plays out, we'll find out. But, if they can get even a quarter of rest for Hurts and Sanders and Kelsey and, guys like that, I think they'd be pretty happy with that.
All right, Martin, need your take on something else going to go down on Sunday besides Eagles and the Giants. We know Eagles win. They lock up everything. Took them longer than it should have, but they get everything that they wanted as per 3 weeks ago. Or the Dallas Cowboys could lose, and then at least they get the division. San Francisco could steal the number 1 seed. At least the Eagles would be number 2 if they win, and if they lose and the Cowboys lose. How much faith you got in Sam Howell leading the Commanders to a victory over the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday?
I don't have any faith whatsoever.
That'd be a 0 on Sammy Howell. You're going to get a text from Kratz. Ed Kratz is the Delaware Valley's biggest Sam Howell fan.
Yeah, well, I think the better way to frame that, Jody, do you have more confidence in Sam Howell or Carson Wentz? Now, that's an interesting conversation.
Well, no. Don't leave my guy Taylor Heineke out of it. He's still on the roster.
It's not that I don't have any confidence in Sam Howell. I just kind of get the feeling that Micah Parsons will be introducing himself early and often to Sam Howell, and that won't go very well for the Fighting
by the way, Micah, you sure Micah Parsons still plays for the Cowboys? Because he hadn't done diddly squat since he ran his mouth about Jalen Hurts. He hadn't done much for the Cowboys at all. The potential defensive player of the year kind of been a disappearing act the last couple of games.
But like guys like that, I mean, he can smell blood in the water. He knows he's going up against a team that, just going through the motions. He can rack up like 2 or 3 sacks and get right back into the defensive player of the year.
Not happening.
Go after Hassan.
Nick Bosa's got that thing locked up.
This could be like a 2 or 3 sack game for Micah Parsons. I think he's going to bring it because he sees a weak offensive line, a team that's like in total turmoil and chaos, and a rookie quarterback. I think he smells blood. I'm not saying that makes him a great player. I'm just saying that, he knows how to take advantage.
Eagles fans better be careful. They're going to go viral with the disrespect for Micah Parsons, and he's going to show up on the divisional round. And,
you watch. He'll have a big game against the Commanders.
Yeah.
Okay. Last 3 weeks, 6 tackles, 1 meaningless sack. That's all I'm saying. He chose to try and minimize the season that Jalen Hurts has had. And then all of a sudden, he's just one of the Cowboys. If you're right, and he shows up and has 4 sacks this week, I'm going to have to give you credit, Martin. But I'm just noting that he hadn't done a lot since he ran his mouth.
At MFrank NFL. Follow Martin on Twitter. Read him, DelawareOnline.com. Well, I'll leave you there because I need to get your prediction, not for the game. We know how the game's going to go.
Do we?
I do.
Okay.
I'm confident. I'm confident in the game. Well, as long as Jalen Hurts plays.
Yeah.
Odds, Jalen Hurts plays, Martin Frank. Give me a number.
Like 100%.
100%.
100. You're going 100.
Right, then I'm going 100% Eagles win then. There you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
will he be starting, or will he be coming off the bench? With my wacky idea from last week, that didn't materialize. No chance happening this week either, huh?
I think the
Minshew
has kind of left the building.
Understood. Martin, great stuff. Thanks for hopping on. We appreciate it. You know, we're going to have you on during the playoffs too. Thanks for doing it with us today.
All right. Always a pleasure. Take care, and see you soon.
You will see John at the game on Sunday. You will see me back there on Birds 365 come playoff time. Unfortunately, we didn't get Ed Kratz on this week. We'll certainly have Eddie on next week. He is the biggest Sam Howell fan on the planet.
You like Sam Howell, but hey, Washington, it would have been crazy to start anybody but Sam Howell this week after they got eliminated. Now, we talked about Ron Rivera not knowing he could get eliminated. I think he made two mistakes, right? I think he shouldn't have went back to Carson Wentz. He should have kept Taylor Heineke. And then he made the decision, I'm going back to Taylor Heineke, and then he changes to Sam Howell because guess what? The organization got in his ear, just like Joe Shane got in Brian Daboll's there, and said, look, this is the situation, Ron. We don't need to see. We know who Taylor Heineke is, and they should have known he's better than Carson Wentz at this stage. By the way, that is one of the great balls in sports history. I mean, the fact that Carson Wentz has dropped to the level he has, we could do a week of shows on that. But Ron Rivera's made so many mistakes. I don't know how he survives. And he might be the nicest guy in the NFL when it comes to head coaches. I don't want to see him fired, but I don't know how he survives that.
I'm not sure he does either. And this is going to sound just crazy. As bad as Carson Wentz has been this year for the Commanders, and I think Rivera woefully made a mistake in replacing Taylor Heineke when he did with Carson Wentz. I wonder if they're missing Carson Wentz at all in Indianapolis. He wasn't real good there last year either, but he's better than what they put out there this year. And I know he's St. Nick here in town, and we hope he's okay because he got hurt in the game against the Giants last week. But Nick Foles was just awful in the game and a half that he played. They're back to Sam Ehlinger, who can't play quarterback in the NFL. There's one guy that I'll give you. Gardner Minshew's better than Sam Ehlinger. Not many other guys in the NFL that I'd say he's a better quarterback who are currently.
What about Nick Mullins? You might see Nick Mullins.
Yeah. Oh my God.
You might see Nick Mullins versus Nathan Peterman. There's two.
Now there's a debate: Nathan Peterman and Gardner Minshew. Those two are actually close. Yeah, as you know, we had
that is tremendous disrespect to Gardner Minshew.
That is accurate reporting on my part and analysis. When Nick Mullins was here, I just said the guy can't play in the NFL. Why is he still in the NFL? He must be a really good guy or a leader. He's got to have some attribute that I don't understand.
I don't know. I'm not nearly. Now, Nick, when he was here, was coming off, I think it was shoulder or elbow surgery. I forget which one. And he clearly wasn't healthy. With San Francisco, I never understood your now, my respect for Kyle Shanahan. He can scheme people up. But he wasn't bad for a backup third-string quarterback. There's a lot of bad backup quarterbacks, Jody. That's my major point.
Nick Mullins is certainly one of them. And sorry to say this, I know it's blasphemous here in Philadelphia. So is Nick Foles. What happened in the past will never change. It's etched in stone. There, speaking of stone, there's a stone statue outside the stadium to recognize what he did. And I am not knocking or mocking or questioning any of that. That happened. We all saw it with our very eyes. Johnny Mac saw it in person. He can't play anymore. He shouldn't be. He shouldn't have been in the
No,
league
we're going to see one. We're going to see one this week, probably in Tyrod Taylor. But there's a lot of bad quarterback.
I'll take Tyrod Taylor over Gardner Minshew every day of the week and twice on Sunday. That's why I'm not locking this game up just yet. And we have to hope and believe that Jalen Hurts is going to play. Much more so importance of the games to come thereafter, come playoff time. But yeah, you talk about the journey you got to take from going from the potential number 1 seed to having to play probably 3 straight playoff road games. Sorry, we talked about it, the window being open to go to the Super Bowl this year. Holy mackerel. The window doesn't shut, but it's as wide open as can be when you're the number 1 seed.
Losing this game would be a catastrophe because you're not getting help from Washington. I mean, forget about that. You're not going to back into the number 1 seed. So you got to win this game. There's no doubt about it. You got to win this game.
If the Commanders don't beat the Cowboys on Sunday, I'm blaming Ed Kratz. It's all Ed Kratz's fault if they don't win that game because Sam Howell's not good enough to step in and play. Sorry. I have strong opinions on quarterbacks, and my opinion on Sam Howell was he was woefully overrated after his...
Daniel Jones is one of them. Daniel Jones has turned the narrative around. Daniel Jones is... I'm not going to call him entrenched, but the Giants are going to re-sign him. The Giants are going to give him a big deal.
That, and now I'm going to get myself in trouble again because I've had to put out some mea culpas from Daniel Jones because, did I call him on the carpet for his inabilities over the year? Yeah, I have to give him credit for the season that he's had. The Giants have virtually no weapons at wide receiver, and he's still finding ways to win games.
He's turning Isaiah Hodgkins into a star, whatever his name is. Isaiah Hodgkins.
Hodgkins, I believe it is. Hodgins. I'm not even sure either. So I've had to do some mea culpas on Daniel Jones between you and me, and we got Pat Leonard coming up, a Giant guy, in less than 20 minutes from now. It could be one of the better things that happened to the Eagles over the offseason if the Giants woefully overpay Daniel Jones. Now, if he just continues to ascend, I'm going to look even more stupid.
No, I'm with you. I think there's limitations there. But I do think, a big part of Daniel Jones 180 has been Brian Daboll and Mike Kapka. I do think, if you're in a good position with good coaches, they can elevate you. I've talked about Nick Mullins with Kyle Shanahan, and he was able to scheme him up into doing some things. And you see what Brock Purdy's doing as a third-string quarterback and just winning football games and putting up unbelievable numbers. I guess what? If you put Brock Purdy in Houston, he's not doing what he's doing in San Francisco. So I do think, the Giants finally got it right. And that's, my concern about the Giants. If I'm an Eagles fan, they got a good coach, and I don't think Cap is going to be there long because he's probably going to get a head coaching job soon. Not this year, but soon. I don't think he's going to be there for a long time. They finally got it right at coach, and that's going to be a problem.
Agreed. I think Daboll's done an outstanding job. And by the way, again, don't want to get too far afield. We got Pat Leonard coming up. How badly did the Chargers screw it up last year? That they had Daboll in their sights, that there were rumors out there was all but a done deal. And then all of a sudden, Staley is their head coach.
Yeah.
And they had Brian Daboll. He wanted that job. And something went wrong out there. I apologize because I don't remember what it was as far as the reporting goes. But he was supposed to be their next head coach. He was supposed to be undertaking Justin Herbert for the next decade. How badly did L.A. screw that up?
Were you a Brady Bunch fan growing up, Jody? Did you watch the Brady Bunch?
Oh, yeah.
Remember the one where Greg became the rock star and he was Johnny? I think it was Johnny Bravo because he bit
exactly
the suits?
right.
He fit
He
the
fit
suit.
the jacket. Yes,
Yeah,
that's
fit the
why he
jacket.
was Johnny Bravo.
Yeah. Well, Brandon Staley fits the suits in the NFL, what they think of a new, young, ascending head coach. Brian Daboll doesn't. That's what happened.
So how dare the New York Giants hire a guy who doesn't fit the suit? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. Well, the Giants, you should be more open-minded is what I'm telling you, the Chargers. The Giants, look, they've made a ton of bad decisions at coaching. They, since Tom Coughlin left, they've made bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. They finally got it right. So you give them credit for getting it right this time, but they've made a lot of mistakes as well. Yeah, I mean, people make mistakes all the time hiring coaches. And with Brandon Staley, he fit the suit. He fit the Sean McVay suit is what it is.
Well, and he didn't fit the suit because he's defense. The NFL is all trending toward all offensive coach. You have to find that next.
I'm talking about the look.
Coach.
I'm talking about the look, not the scheme and not the offense.
Because stop. Do you really believe that an NFL team would hire a guy because of what he looks like?
No, you're misunderstanding.
I really am. Please explain.
They want young, energetic. They want a certain type of person who looks a certain way. And I'm not talking about race or anything like that because people's jumping. They want a young guy who they think is going to be there for 20 years. And everybody wants Sean McVay. Everybody wants that type. And he coached under Sean McVay. And again, if you ever ordered a coffee, and that's why I bring up the Brady Bunch. Everybody wants that style of coach. You see it with Kevin O'Connell. You see it with Nick Sirianni, to be honest. Everybody wants that style of young coach.
How old is Staley as compared to Daboll?
Brandon's, I have to look it up. He's in his 30s.
You think there's more than 5 years between them?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Maybe it was an age thing. Whatever it was, shame on the Chargers. And the Giants benefited because Daboll was still available and made a great hire with him this offseason. All right, McDonald and McMullen hanging with you on Birds 365. We'll take a timeout when we come back. I want to talk about a former Eagle who got snubbed yesterday. And between you and me, it really pisses me off as far as Hall of Fame status goes. We'll touch on that next. Birds 365 coming right back.